Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about the Sig P320 handgun and why I think it's basically cooked as a design. Now, a bit of background here, the P320 is a very popular handgun model. It's sold very well. It's manufactured by Sig Sauer. However, in recent times, there have been reports that the gun may fire without pulling the trigger. This is a big deal for a gun because while you want it to fire every time you pull the trigger, assuming it's properly loaded and so forth, you also want it to fire no times when you are not pulling the trigger because that's a major safety issue. But there have been reports of it going off without anyone touching the trigger, including it's been implicated and it's been suggested that this is at fault in the death of an airman. So all of this is a big deal. Additionally, there have been sort of online researchers who have done tests, and one of the most sort of viewed ones is one by the Wyoming Gun Project, who have graciously allowed me to use a little snippet here, but it shows the Sig P320 going off with just a little bit of trigger depression, not enough that it should be able to fire, and some manipulation of the slide.
This gun is factory all the way post-voluntary upgrade. So we're going to see if we can get it to set off a primed case. Okay, folks, so we're out here in the garage. We have the P320. We have a primed 45 case, and we have the magazine full of empties just to put pressure up on the slide, simulating that it is fully loaded. All right. We got the case in there, simulating that it is fully loaded. Now, if I was to pull the trigger now, it would go off because the striker safety would be disengaged, it would go off. But now we're trying to simulate. Let's see if we can get it. All right. I think that's probably good right there, just to guesstimate. No input from the finger. I'm just going to tap the slide and we're going to see if it goes off. Now, again, this is simulating what the FBI found as a shelf on either the sear or the striker hook, and it getting caught up on that. Or maybe you're putting input on the trigger and you've only gone less than a millimeter through the firing sequence, through the actual movement of the sear down is less than 1 millimeter. And we're going to see if it'll set the cartridge off. I don't know. We'll try it a couple times. It might not. This safety might be working, but the other safeties might not have been. So let's see. Did you see that? Holy crap!
As you can gather from his reaction, this is not ideal gun behavior. However, this doesn't establish that any of the reported instances of a gun going off without somebody pulling the trigger happened like this. It just doesn't. It illustrates a possible failure mechanism. And further, this is a failure mechanism where the trigger is at least partially engaged. Not fully engaged, but partially so. And the issue is that some of these have been reported to be no engagement. Like a proper holster should cover the trigger entirely, so there shouldn't be any trigger engagement at all. It's also been reported by some other people that other firearms can do the same thing and don't have this sort of reputation. This is part of the story, but it's not the full story. And so I appreciate the heck out of this reporting. There's also more to be discovered, and there's more to whatever's going on, or maybe less to whatever's going on. This isn't the thing that I think is most concerning. In fact, the thing that is kind of the biggest news to me, as a lawyer, is a court case that, ironically, Sig just won. Now, you might be saying, wait a minute, how is a case that Sig won that concerning? And I can explain, because if I was Sig, or a gun store that sells P320s, or somebody who owns a P320, I would be very worried about this particular ruling. So let's have a look here, or at least, sorry, rather than this ruling, this finding by a jury. I should be more specific here. Okay, so let's have a look at this case. So the plaintiffs in this case are a police officer and his wife. And the police officer is the primary plaintiff here, but they're both suing Sig Sauer. Now, the plaintiff, Jacques Desrosiers, resides in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and has 24 years of service with the Cambridge Police Department, but has not returned to active duty following the incident described below. You might be saying, well, what happened to take him off of active duty? Well, it's kind of horrific. So, in October 2019, Officer Desrosiers is a police officer for the CPD. At this time, the CPD were using P320 Sig Sauer firearm models. On October 10th, 2019, Officer Desrosiers was on active duty with the CPD. Upon coming back from his lunch while on duty, Officer Desrosiers parked his car across the street from the CPD building. While walking towards the Cambridge Police Department, Officer Desrosiers had his department-issued P320 service firearm securely under his department-issued belt when the gun unintentionally discharged. At no time did Officer Desrosiers touch the trigger, and no other item touched the trigger when the gun discharged. These are the allegations, right? Nothing has been established here. This is from the complaint. The bullet impacted Officer Desrosiers' scrotum, left inner thigh, and exited his right knee, causing devastating injury. So, this is a bad injury. And in fact, this is the reason for why there's one of the claims that's made. So he claims for all sorts of things about his personal injury, but if you're wondering why his wife is in this claim, well, that is answerable when we get to count 6. Count 6 is a claim you don't see all that often, but here it is. So, Plaintiff Yolette Desrosiers' loss of consortium claim against defendant. Now, loss of consortium includes lots of things. It includes all of the things that sort of a husband does for a wife, or vice versa, including specifically what you're thinking. So, because he suffered a catastrophic injury, yeah, that one. Because he suffered a catastrophic injury, he was severely and permanently injured and has been rendered disabled. Now, they note here, before suffering these injuries, Jacques Desrosiers was able to and did perform all duties of husband and did perform all these duties, including assisting in maintaining the home and providing love, companionship, affection, society, sexual relations, moral support, and solace to plaintiff Yolette Desrosiers. And from the date of the injury to the present time, he is unable to perform the duties of a husband, and so she is deprived of his spouse's consortium. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what you think it is, and so had they won, the jury would have had to put a dollar figure on that. Like, what exactly is the value of his eggplant? So, just saying, sometimes courts are weird, and sometimes jury duty involves some weird things. But we have a ruling from the jury, and we have a verdict. Let's have a look at the verdict, and why this verdict should make Sig and various others a little bit nervous, why this is sort of a bad sign. So, verdict form, July 28th, 2025. We, the jury, unanimously return the following verdict. So, question 1. Did plaintiff Jacques Desrosiers prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant Sig Sauer Incorporated breached the implied warranty of merchantability by defectively designing the P320 pistol? And the answer to that from the jury is yes. So, this jury found that the pistol was defectively designed. If you answered yes to question 1, did plaintiff Jacques Desrosiers prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant Sig Sauer's defective design of the P320 pistol caused him injury? Answer to that, also yes. Question 3. Did plaintiff Jacques Desrosiers prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant Sig Sauer breached the implied warranty of merchantability by failing to give adequate warnings regarding risks associated with the P320 pistol. Also yes. And then 4, if you answered yes to question 3, did plaintiff Jacques Desrosiers prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant Sig Sauer's failure to give adequate warnings regarding risks associated with the P320 caused him injury? And they said no to that one. But then they have to carry on because the next question says, if you answered yes to both questions 1 and 2 and /or both 3 and 4, please proceed to answer question 5. Otherwise, your deliberations are complete. And the otherwise your deliberations are complete would be that if they didn't find yes to both 1 and 2 or both 3 and 4, then they have already found for Sig Sauer, and that's the end of it. But question 5. Did defendant Sig Sauer prove by a preponderance of the evidence that plaintiff Jacques Desrosiers voluntarily and unreasonably used the P320 pistol, knowing that it was defective and dangerous, and was injured as a result? Answer, yes. And that yes means that he will not recover any money. That's the end of it. That's it. So, yeah. The next question would have been the amount of damages. And, if you answered no to question 5, please proceed to answer questions 6 and 7. Otherwise, your deliberations are complete. So for this jury, their deliberations are in fact complete. Now you might be saying, how is it possible that Sig is found to have made a defective gun and that defect injured this particular plaintiff, and yet he gets no money? Well, I don't know for certain because it's a jury trial. It's a whole thing. We don't necessarily get to know what the jury decided and what they thought. But we can mine the record for some clues, and I found what I consider to be a little wee cluey clue, and that is in one of the many documents that was filed. It's document number 72, and this is from defendant Sig Sauer's motion to exclude the evidence and opinions of the plaintiff's expert, James Turton. They're ultimately unsuccessful in excluding this expert, by the way, but we're only going to look at one little critical part, because there's one little bit where Sig tells us a thing that becomes a pretty essential little clue. So, here we go. This is the clue. This is a case in which the plaintiff police officer, in an admitted violation of police department policy, knowingly shoved an unholstered loaded handgun with no external safety into his waistband, and now seeks to blame the manufacturer of the gun when it was his negligent handling of the gun led to an accidental discharge. There's a little grammatical problem there, but that's not the big issue there. So basically what they're saying is that that the officer took the gun and stuffed it down the front of his pants without having a holster. Now, I mean, a gun down the front of your pants is a thing. It's called appendix carry. It's actually very common. But you very much want to do this with a holster, right? You very much want to make sure that you've actually got a holster for this process, because a holster does critical things at this particular juncture. One of those critical things is that it prevents anything from touching the trigger. Because if you're just stuffing it down the front of your pants, if your underwear gets a fold in it or something, it can catch the trigger and possibly make it go off. So it seems likely, and I can't say for certain, right? This is a jury verdict. It's kind of inscrutable to a certain extent. I haven't spoken to any of these jurors. I haven't gotten any of their takes. I'm just trying to figure it out from looking at the case record. But it looks like he may have lost out on money based on the fact that he stuffed the thing down the front of his pants. But it is still a bad ruling, or a bad finding for Sig. The reason why I say that is not because it has any precedential value. It doesn't. It's a jury verdict. It doesn't convince another jury one way or the other. But if one jury was able to be convinced that this thing was of defective manufacture, then probably another jury can too. And they won't all be people who are trying to carry it sort of dickless gangster style, but that'll also include people who were using proper holsters and maybe have a better case. And one of those people who maybe has a better case just filed a suit. This is the case of Richard Fernandez Jr. versus Sig Sauer and CTC Gunworks. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said that this is a reason why there might be some concern, not just by Sig, but also by gun stores. And so CTC Gunworks is the gun store that sold him the P320 in this case. So Fernandez is another instance of an police officer whose gun went off, but this one he indicates that his own gun went off. And again, this is just a pleading. It's not a finding. It's not a ruling. It's not anything like that. But he says that his own gun went off while fully holstered and without anyone ever pulling the trigger. So, by the way, that first case that we looked at, it was filed in 2022, and we're just now getting a verdict in 2025. So you can sort of gather that we won't see a verdict on this one for a while. But I will also point out this one's got a neat little shout out to a YouTuber, Brandon Herrera, also known as the AK guy, who's got a YouTube channel that is way bigger than mine. Gets referenced in a citation. So does Achilles Heel Tactical, who I'm not familiar with, but maybe I'll have to reach out. So this is a bit of a big deal. Now, I also started out and I said that I would be a bit nervous about this, whether I was Sig Sauer, and you could tell that Sig's got a reason to be concerned. Whether as gun stores, and I think I've covered the gun stores issue, right? We're seeing one getting sued. I suspect we'll see more gun stores also getting sued. But also you're saying, wait, you're putting in Sig P320 owners. And I don't just mean the possibility that this thing goes off and does this. I also mean the possibility that this could end badly in all sorts of circumstances. For example, imagine the circumstance of you pull a P320 in a defensive situation and it gets excited and decides it's shooting time when you're still not there yet. That's a problem. And you could be in a situation where they might say, well, that's still on you. You may not face, murder, but you could still face some serious liability. Similarly, what happens if you own a P320 and you've seen all of these videos and you're well aware of all of this stuff? And, you have your P320 and you put it, on the nightstand beside, the bed, and it goes off and it fires through the wall and into your neighbor. Well, you could potentially look at liability. There could be liability there, not just on Sig's end, but also on your end. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really want to... Now, I was about to say something that's a lie here. I was going to say I don't really want to own one, and that's a lie because I'm actually thinking I may buy one. I'll have to have it brought in because it's now really difficult to get handguns in Canada, and it's only possible because I've got a firearm business license. I now have reason to buy one, which is to do legal testing and analysis and discussion and so forth. But if I was just sort of an ordinary user, I would have a lot less reason to have one. Certainly, we're starting to see various events are banning them, including police events, which gets us to the other really interesting thing here, which is that all of what I've been saying might be why Sig is starting to fight back. And this is a case I plan to cover in full detail in a bit, but Sig is doing some stuff that I think are maybe a little risky as a strategy. So we've got the case of Sig Sauer Incorporated versus Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. and Monica Alexander in her capacity as the executive director of the same. And they are basically suing the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission for banning the P320, M17, and M18 firearms from all properties owned or leased by them indefinitely. So they're saying, we are going to sue to force you to allow this particular gun back onto the premises. And I think that's a bold move, but we'll see how it plays out. Now, none of this actually says that the P320 is a bad gun, because I don't know. I haven't been able to do the testing. I see enough there to be concerned, certainly, but I don't know. Right? I can't say that I know the P320 is a bad gun and it's going to kill you and it's going to, steal your car and, kick your dog and so forth, right? I don't know. But that doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is what's going to get found in court. And we've already seen that there's enough there that at least one person was able to convince a jury that the P320 is defectively manufactured or defectively designed, which, if one person can do it, it'll be done by somebody else as well. And this is potentially a problem. So at the end of the day, I'd be, very concerned. Anyway, apologies if this video is a little rambling or if I make less sense than usual. I'm recording this on the tail end of a flu that I'm hoping to recover from. But, I mean, recover from soon, because I guess the alternatives to recover are not great, but you know what I mean. I don't think complete non-recovery is on the table, but anyway, yeah, I hope you found this one to be interesting or educational. I hope I've added something to the discussion beyond just, kind of piling on, because, it's a big discussion. There's lots of people sort of having thoughts on it, but I really wanted to cover the legal angle of it because there's better gunsmiths out there. There's better people to analyze the precision machining and all of those things. And, Wyoming Gun Project, I think, go check them out. They got a follow from me, or they got a subscription from me. They should probably have earned your subscription as well if you're interested in firearm stuff. Yeah, go check them out. But the legal stuff, I went, ooh, this is not great. Sig certainly would have hoped to get a ruling that just said, no, our gun is fine. And that's not where the jury's head was. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it to be interesting or educational. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. Check out the video I've linked below, which is the video I got that clip from. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Bottle Shock and Oz, Canada's National Firearms Association, the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, PJs Forever, Angela Skelton, Cielo, Kyle Fox, Nether Portal 3, Purple Dragonair, and Shay B, as well as at the $20 level: Mark, Lindsay Metcalf, Larry Kalniak, Drunk All of the Baileys, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Marvin CZ. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. Hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.